Good evening, everybody. Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com, live at the Xfinity Center in College Park, Maryland, where number 17 Maryland just defeated Purdue 57-50. This will be your wrap video following Purdue's fourth Big Ten road loss in as many tries. Correction, this is not College Park, Maryland. This is not the Xfinity Center. This is Xfinity Wi-Fi. That's going to have to be good enough today. As you're aware, perhaps, weather deep sixed my plans to go to Maryland, canceling my flight to Baltimore. Couldn't get there. So here I am tonight in my home office. Used to be a little girl's bedroom. For the past year and a half, it has been my home office. For every one of those days in that past year and a half, it has been getting painted next week. It has not been painted. The TV, at least, is up on the wall. That's as far as I've gotten. So we will get it done one of these days. But right now, I'm just going to do a wrap video following Purdue's 57-50 loss at Maryland without being at Maryland. Hopefully you won't notice the difference. There's no banners behind me. There's no seats behind me. There's no janitors. There's no vacuums. There's no back vacs, whatever we call them, back backs. 57-50 once again. Purdue loses on the road in the Big Ten once again. The biggest thing about this game, obviously, is this. One, when Purdue played at Nebraska, first 5 to 6 minutes, whatever it was, absolute disaster. Illinois, first 5-6 minutes, absolute disaster. Rest of the game, something less of a disaster. Disaster nonetheless. Michigan, not as big a disaster. Purdue turned the ball over too much, led to double-digit Michigan points. Had it not in the first half, before cleaning it up entirely in the second half, maybe Purdue wins that game. We don't know. Today at Maryland, first 5 or 6 minutes, maybe not the level of disaster as Nebraska and Illinois, but being down 20-4 qualifies as a disaster, obviously. 9-0 on the road. You know, they say that, you got to be 10 points better than your opponent on the road. Well, the opposite then of that is that when you spot your opponent 10 points right out of the chute on the road, more often than not, you're going to lose. Give Maryland some credit here. This is not a great offensive basketball team, or has not been through Big Ten play thus far. For them to come out and make a couple of early threes to get that N1 right away off the Purdue turnover, to have 9 points on the board before Purdue's even gotten its third possession. You know, that's on Purdue, but that's also a credit to Maryland for making those plays nonetheless. None of which I actually saw, because the game before Purdue and Maryland went overboard. But I can only imagine what occurred. I know that Maryland made the shots, so I'm going to give them credit for making the shots. But such is life when you have to cover games off of television, I guess. Purdue's got to find a way to start better on the road. This is not groundbreaking analysis. That is not a particularly hot take. This is not a particularly revelatory opinion. Clearly, Purdue has to start better on the road, because it has shown it can be competitive on the road. It can play good competitive basketball on the road in 3 out of these 4 games that they've lost. It's just that they've got to do it right away instead of waiting for a certain juncture of the game, a certain predicament to be in before starting to play that way. What the solution to that is, I don't know. Obviously, if there was an easily available solution, Purdue would have applied it to this game after the results of the past 3 on the road. But you can't blame the week off either, because, this is not outside of what Purdue's been this season. So Purdue's got to find a way one way or the other. And I think the reason this was a game at all largely was Nojel Eastern. I think that, it's going to be hard for even the biggest of his critics tonight to say that, his value wasn't blatantly obvious to the point that it literally hit you over the head. And look, he scored, he rebounded, he defended, he did all of those things people want him to score. He scored. He always rebounds and defends. But to me, the biggest thing, and I wrote this earlier, the biggest thing about his game today was just the competitiveness. Just when Purdue needed somebody to be, an ultimate competitor, he was the one who sort of did that for his team. And it was a couple of games ago after the Illinois game when he basically promised to fight everyone in front of him from there on out to set a tone for his team after Purdue showed an utter lack thereof at Illinois. And I thought this was a great example of him doing just that. He's always been a guy who affects basketball games without scoring. Sometimes people don't recognize value when a player is not scoring, but that value has always been there. I mean, he's not the best player, in the Big Ten, whatever it may be. He's not, the most consistent guy in every single phase of basketball, but he's always affected games for the better one way or the other. And I think today was a game where he affected everything across the board for the better. But it started simply with his intangibles, simply with playing hard, simply with being a competitor. It's one thing Purdue has needed on the road is who are their competitors. That is where wanting to win really, really shows up. Who are the guys who are not afraid of anything around them? Who are the guys who are going to, punch back 10 times harder when they get punched in the face? That's sort of something with this team, that there's some really, really nice kids on this team. Don't know if there's anybody who will cut somebody's throat to get a loose ball, something like that. I apologize for being so graphic, but hopefully you know what I mean. Nojel Eastern was that guy today. He defended like his life depended on it. He was aggressive offensively, and he scored. He made the shots that he got. He got the wide open layup at the basket, made it. I know that's kind of a low bar, but it has been something he's struggled a little bit with. He made his free throws. He made a jumper. If this is the Nojel Eastern Purdue has the rest of the year, they're going to win a lot of games, to me. But even if this isn't the Nojel Eastern offensively that they have the rest of the year, that competitiveness, that fight, that defense, that rebounding, that stuff that's largely always there, is a big, big deal for this team. You can look at it like, okay, Nojel Eastern scored 14 points, 16 points, whatever it was, to lead Purdue. That's great news, right? Well, is it great news that he led Purdue in scoring, or is that a reflection that there was a void there that someone had to fill, and he just happened to be that guy? I think in a perfect world, obviously you would like to get 22 to 25 points out of Travion Williams and Matt Harms between them. Obviously, Purdue only gets 14 shots for the two of them. Today, I can't remember how many they combined for, but it certainly wasn't what you'd expect to get out of them. I said 22 to 25. That might even be conservative. You might want to get upwards of, 28 to 30 out of those guys. Purdue just didn't really get them established as well. Jalen Smith, as Matt Painter astutely pointed out after the game, obviously had a lot to do with it. Jalen Smith is an NBA player who happens to be playing college basketball right now. Could have gone pro last year, didn't. Where he would have been drafted last year, I don't know. Came back for his sophomore year at Maryland. Life must be good. Anyway, he had a lot to do with it. That is a pro that Matt Harms and Travion Williams were going up against, and obviously the pro won out on this day. I thought he was great. Making the early threes was a big deal. The dunks around the basket were a really big deal for them. The 10 rebounds were a big deal. He had a couple putbacks, but also just his rim protection was a really big deal for Maryland. Purdue's got two good big guys. Maryland on this day had a great one, and the great one won out. That baseline turnaround he made after Purdue cut it to 7 in the second half was an NBA shot made by a college kid, and he just made great plays to help his team win this game. But also, I thought Purdue was good enough defensively. I thought the job they did on Anthony Cowan, I thought he really sort of had it going in the first half as a facilitator more than anything, and that counts just as much as scoring because it means the point guard's kind of controlling the game. Purdue is letting them get what they want offensively, and that manifests itself in Anthony Cowan hitting people for open shots or dunks, whatever it may be. But Purdue really, after he had 6 of his 7 assists in the first half, I thought they did a great job on Cowan. They did a great job on all their guards when you just look at the numbers. But Purdue is a good defensive team. It always has been a good defensive team. Its defensive success, though, lies, too, on offensive productivity. Not turning the ball over, getting defensive rebounds, first and foremost, without, affording the opponent any second chances. But they have to embrace that because they're not going to turn into, 1990s UNLV here overnight. They're not going to start scoring 80 to 90 points a game. This is kind of what Purdue is. They're a limited team offensively. They have to grind it out offensively. They have to win with defense. They have to win with rebounding, especially on the road, because what you cannot do is you cannot count on shooting the ball well. You cannot count on always making the shot that sidetracks the run that the home team usually is able to make. And Purdue just has to win ugly. And I thought today was a day where they had to win ugly, and they had a chance there at the end because they did show some toughness. They did show some competitiveness. They did show some poise. They did show a lot of the intangible stuff that you have to win games on the road in the Big Ten, to win games at all anywhere. But it was an ugly game, and for Purdue it was especially ugly early on. And for all the positive that came in Purdue, coming from 20-4 down to being down 3 in the last couple minutes before not scoring again, and that's where it shows up, where you don't necessarily have an offensive piece that you can rely on every single time down the floor, whether that's a guard in kind of a decision-making role, whether that's a big guy who's going to get a good shot off or get fouled every single time. In an ideal world, that's what Purdue would have. But again, obviously Jalen Smith was the best big guy in this game. But, Purdue just has to cobble together enough offense and continue being really good on defense, really good on the glass, and win ugly. And again, Purdue put itself in a position to win this game ugly. But the problem for Purdue is that the starts to these games are just insanely ugly, too ugly to overcome. Now, I know Purdue is down 3 within 4 minutes. That doesn't mean the start of the game didn't cost Purdue the game. This game was lost at the beginning more so than it was the end. Because if you're not down 16 points before you even get to the second media timeout, whatever it was, on the road, you are not winning this game. If Purdue was just a little more solid early on, or you can say if Maryland was just a little less red hot, this might be a totally different ballgame down the stretch. But, the travel on Isaiah Thompson, I don't know. Obviously, I watched on TV, so I had a better view of that than I would have had if I were actually at the game. Don't know what to make of that. I didn't see a travel. Matt Painter didn't see a travel. I wouldn't expect Matt Painter to see a travel, but that's life on the road. You have to be that much better because stuff is going to happen, and Purdue hasn't been that much better. At times, it's been that much worse, and it's been at the worst time possible, right to start the game. And when you're down 10-0 on the road, more often than not, you are done. And that's kind of where Purdue was for the third or fourth time in 4 Big Ten games now. Just got to start these games better. Got to find a way to do that. Whether that's maturity, whether that's toughness, whatever other nebulous term we throw around after these games when we try to, theorize about teams' limitations, teams' problems, whatever it may be. I don't know. I don't have the answer, but Purdue has to find an answer because Purdue has to win a couple of these games the rest of the way to make the NCAA tournament. If it wants to be in the Big Ten race conversation, that, again, is a long, long way off. Only mentioning that because last year proved that anything is possible at all times. But the NCAA tournament is the bigger issue. Purdue's got to win a couple of these games to make the NCAA tournament. It just does. It has shown it's capable. It has not shown it is consistent enough in these games to do that. You cannot play 25 good minutes and 15 terrible minutes on the road and expect to win against most anyone in the Big Ten. You can beat Northwestern probably in Evanston, but I would have said the same thing about Nebraska, and they lost that game. So this is truly a season where Purdue can take nothing for granted. Not that there are a lot of seasons where you can take a lot for granted, but this one is especially true. Purdue's got to find a way to start these games better on the road, or it's not going to win a road game all year against anybody other than Northwestern, possibly. Again, taking nothing for granted here. And if Purdue doesn't win any road games, Purdue's, not going to play in the NCAA tournament most likely. So that's kind of what I got. Those are the points I wanted to make following after watching Purdue's 57-50 Maryland loss at Maryland on television. So appreciate everybody watching. Next time we do this after a Maryland game, hopefully it will be from the Xfinity Center and not just across Xfinity Wi-Fi, which thankfully didn't let out in the middle of this. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for reading. Thank you for listening. And thank you for processing our materials, however it is you process our material. So I'm going to go back to doing the windows here. Have a good night, everybody.